The galaxy did not fall into chaos all at once. It happened quietly, system by system, light by light. At first, it was just a delay in long-range sensors. Then a single star went dark without warning. No explosion, no debris. One moment it existed, then it didn't. The space around it looked untouched, clean, as if the star had never been there. Within days, 3 more vanished. Across the galaxy, panic spread faster than any fleet. Trade routes shut down. Civilian worlds locked their skies. Ancient empires activated weapons they had sworn never to use again. And still, no one understood what they were facing. In the center of known space, the Galactic Council gathered in an emergency session. The chamber was filled with towering figures, glowing forms, and machine minds older than most suns. This council had survived wars, plagues, and gods. Now, they were afraid. Reports streamed across the air in glowing symbols. Entire systems silent. Defense networks failing without damage. No enemy fleet detected. It was as if something was eating the galaxy from the inside. Voices rose in anger and fear. Accusations flew. Some demanded total war. Others called for evacuation of core worlds. A few whispered the forbidden word, extinction. One name did not come up. Humans. They had not come up in centuries. To most species, humans were a footnote in history. A stubborn, short-lived race from an average spiral arm. Clever, yes, but limited. They never built empires. Never ruled the council. Eventually, they withdrew from galactic affairs entirely. Their space went quiet. Many believed they wiped themselves out. Others assumed they faded away, irrelevant and small. Now, as stars died, no one thought to call them. Until a message appeared. It came from the edge of the disaster zone, from a fleeing alien fleet that had lost half its ships without firing a shot. The sender was a veteran admiral, wounded and desperate. His signal cut through every priority channel at once. "This is Admiral Kethrail," the message said, his voice shaking. "We have encountered something. It does not respond. It does not slow. Our weapons do nothing." Behind him, alarms screamed. Lights flickered. "We are requesting aid from any force, any species, that can hear this. This is not a battle. This is..." The transmission cut off. For 3 seconds, there was only silence. Then every sensor in the galaxy screamed at once. Not an attack. Not an explosion. An activation. Ancient systems, older than recorded history, began to wake up. Structures hidden inside dead moons. Beacons buried in empty space. Machines no one remembered building. All of them responded to the same signal. A human signal. It did not come from a fleet. It did not come from a planet. It came from nowhere and everywhere. The message was short, plain, spoken in a calm, tired voice, translated instantly into every known language. "Signal received," it said. "Threat assessment in progress." Pause. Then, almost like an annoyed sigh. "Fine. I'll handle it." The Galactic Council froze. That voice triggered something deep in their archives. Old warnings. Redacted records. Forgotten treaties. Before anyone could speak, the galaxy changed. Border alarms went to maximum alert. Automated defenses realigned, not toward the unknown threat, but away from human space. Ancient AIs that had slept for millennia suddenly locked themselves down. Across dozens of worlds, elders and machine minds reached the same terrifying conclusion at the same time. Whatever humans just activated was not meant to fight alongside the galaxy. It was meant to act alone. Far from the council, in a region of space labeled empty, lights began to turn on around a dead star. Massive shapes unfolded from nothingness. Structures the size of continents aligned with perfect precision. And somewhere, unseen and unheard, humanity finally stopped watching. The Galactic Council did not speak for a long time. Fear had silenced even the oldest species in the chamber. Not the fear of the unknown enemy, but the fear of recognition. That human voice had not sounded powerful or proud. It sounded familiar, like a memory no one wanted to touch. Deep beneath the council chamber, sealed vaults opened for the first time in thousands of cycles. Archives labeled obsolete, irrelevant, and do not prioritize were dragged into the light. Dusty star maps flickered back to life. Names long removed from public records reappeared. Humanity. Historians from dozens of species worked in panic. They searched for proof that the voice meant nothing, that it was a bluff. that humans were still weak, still outdated, still safe to ignore. They found the opposite. The oldest records showed humans as a minor species at first, short-lived, fragile, loud. They spread fast, argued constantly, and asked too many questions. They were not the strongest. They were not the smartest. But they adapted faster than anyone else. When early wars broke out, humans did not dominate battlefields. They studied them. When they lost colonies, they did not demand revenge. They asked why. When treaties failed, humans did not rewrite laws. They rewrote strategy. Other species built empires. Humans built backups. Layer upon layer of redundancy. Hidden supply chains. Quiet defense networks. Projects that did not exist on official budgets. Weapons that were never deployed, only tested and sealed away. Then, slowly, humans stepped back. They left the council. They abandoned shared fleets. They closed borders without warning. The galaxy assumed it was weak. It was preparation. As the archives continued to unfold, a disturbing pattern emerged. Every major galactic disaster across history, every extinction-level event that mysteriously ended, had the same strange gap in the records. The threat would appear. Panic would spread. Then silence. No victory celebrations. No conquered territory. No new rulers. Just survival. And in the background of each event, faint traces of human involvement. Unofficial supply drops. Unclaimed defensive platforms. Anonymous signals with no origin point. Humans never took credit. They never stayed. In the present, the council finally broke the silence. Demands flew across the chamber. Why were humans not monitored? Why were their systems not mapped? Why did no one know what they were capable of? The answer came from an ancient machine mind, its voice slow and heavy. Because, it said, they asked us not to. Long ago, when humans withdrew, they made a simple request. Forget them. Remove their records from priority systems. Treat their space as empty. Do not rely on them. The galaxy agreed. It was easier that way. Now, that decision felt like a death sentence. Far from the council, the regions once labeled abandoned human territory were no longer dark. Power signatures bloomed across space like constellations being redrawn. What sensors first read as stars were corrected, again and again, until the truth became undeniable. They were structures, not ships, not stations, frameworks. Gigantic skeletal shapes unfolded around planets and dead suns, locking into place with impossible precision. They did not rush. They did not react to the spreading threat. They waited. Inside one of these frameworks, a human command node came online for the first time in centuries. Its interior was simple. No banners, no monuments, just function. A handful of humans were present, older than their species should be, sustained by technologies no one else possessed. Their faces showed no fear, only focus. They were not leaders. They were caretakers. Reports streamed in from automated systems that had been watching the galaxy nonstop since humanity withdrew. Star disappearances, energy signatures, consumption patterns. The enemy was growing faster than predicted. One human broke the silence. Containment scenario thresholds crossed, she said calmly. Another nodded. Galactic response failure confirmed. There was no anger in their voices. No triumph. Only responsibility. Back at the council, panic reached a new level when border worlds began reporting something worse than destruction. Stars were not just disappearing. They were being processed. Energy was extracted with perfect efficiency, leaving nothing behind. No radiation. No chaos. Just absence. The enemy was not feeding blindly. It was learning. Galactic fleets attempted coordinated strikes. Thousands of ships jumped together, weapons firing in perfect formation. They vanished in under a second. No debris returned. No escape pods. Not even a signal. The enemy did not acknowledge them. For the first time in history, the galaxy faced something that did not care if it existed. As despair spread, an unexpected transmission reached the council, not from humans, but from one of the ancient races that had outlived most civilizations. Their representative spoke slowly, as if choosing each word carefully. "We have seen this before," it said. The chamber went silent. Not this enemy, the being continued. But this pattern, this fear, this moment when the galaxy realizes it cannot save itself. Someone demanded to know why this was never shared. Because every time, the ancient said, the same thing happens. The image shifted, showing an old star chart, one rewritten countless times. When extinction comes, it said, humans arrive late. They watch longer than anyone is comfortable with. They allow losses no other species would accept. Murmurs of anger spread. And then, the ancient finished. They ended. Completely. A council member shouted the question everyone feared. At what cost? The ancient paused. At a cost they never let the galaxy pay. As if in response, a new alert flooded every system. One of the newly awakened human frameworks had moved. Not toward the enemy, but toward a populated galactic region. Panic erupted. Accusations followed. Had humans decided to sacrifice others? Then the truth emerged. The framework positioned itself between the threat and a cluster of inhabited worlds. It powered up shields of unimaginable scale. Energy readings spiked beyond known limits. The structure did not fire. It braced. The enemy struck moments later. Space itself bent as the attack hit. The framework absorbed the blow. Layers of shielding collapsed, one by one, designed to fail in sequence. The worlds behind it survived. The framework did not. It shattered into drifting fragments, its power signature gone forever. No human distress call followed. No apology was sent. Only a quiet update transmitted across secure channels. Defense successful. Asset expended. Across the galaxy, something changed. Fear turned into something else. Understanding. Humans were not entering the war to win glory or control. They were spending resources the galaxy did not know existed. Throwing away miracles as if they were tools meant to break. And if this was how humans defended others, what horrors were they preparing to unleash on the enemy? The part ends as the Council receives a final data packet from human space. It contains projections so extreme they are immediately classified. At the top of the file is a single line. Estimated human survival probability, irrelevant. For the first time, the galaxy realizes the truth. Humans are not fighting to survive. They are fighting so no one else has to face what comes next. The galaxy finally saw it clearly. Until now, the threat had been numbers and empty star maps. Missing systems. Silent fleets. Data without shape. But when the enemy crossed into the open regions of known space, hiding was no longer possible. It arrived without drama. No war cries. No formation. No warning. A star system at the edge of a major trade route went dark in real time, broadcast live across hundreds of observation arrays. Billions watched as the system's main star dimmed, not explosively, not violently, but smoothly, as if a hand had turned down the universe itself. Then it vanished. Where the star had been, there was nothing, not even darkness. Sensors struggled to describe it. Space behaved incorrectly. Distance meant less. Time readings drifted. The enemy was not destroying stars. It was removing them. Galactic scientists panicked. Some screamed that the readings were wrong. Others demanded immediate military action. Fleets already mobilized began jumping toward the anomaly before orders were even finalized. Humans did nothing. Their structures remained still. Their signals stayed quiet. Their machines continued to observe. This infuriated the Council. Why are they waiting? Demanded one commander. Why aren't they attacking? Asked another. The answer, when it came, was not spoken aloud. It appeared in the data. Human sensors, far more advanced than anything shared with the galaxy, began uploading translated analysis to selected channels. The information was incomplete by design, stripped of sensitive details, but what remained was enough to terrify anyone who understood it. The enemy was not a species. It was a process, a self-improving cosmic mechanism that consumed structured energy sources to increase its own complexity. It did not think in emotion. It did not hate. It did not negotiate. It is optimized. Every star fed it. Every failed attack taught it. Every attempt to communicate was ignored. This thing, one alien scientist whispered, does not know we exist. That was when the first galactic counterattack reached it. Thousands of ships emerged from hyperspace in perfect coordination. Energy weapons lit the void. Reality bent under the weight of combined firepower no civilization had ever matched. For half a second, it looked like hope. Then the enemy reacted. Not by dodging. Not by defending. It simply adjusted. The weapons passed through warped space and failed to connect. Some ships were crushed by gravity they could not detect. Others vanished mid-jump as local physics rewrote themselves around them. The fleet ceased to exist in less time than it took to shout an order. The enemy did not slow. Panic surged across the galaxy like a living thing. Worlds declared emergency law. Religious movements claimed the end had come. Markets collapsed. Entire species began evacuation protocols that had not been tested in thousands of years. Still, the human frameworks did not fire. Inside one human command node, a projection shifted. Models updated. Failure probabilities climbed. A human caretaker closed their eyes for a moment. "It's learning faster than expected," someone said. "Yes," another replied. "Because they keep feeding it data." Humans had seen this before, not this enemy, but this pattern. Galactic panic always led to wasted attacks. Wasted attacks always made the threat worse. That was why humans waited. They were not deciding how to fight. They were deciding whether fighting now would doom everyone. As the enemy moved deeper into populated space, something changed. It altered its approach. Instead of consuming stars at random, it began targeting high-density regions. Systems with advanced infrastructure. Worlds heavy with artificial energy flow. It had recognized efficiency. The Council demanded immediate human intervention. A transmission finally came. It was not a speech. It was not comforting. It was a warning. "This entity cannot be destroyed by force escalation," the human voice said evenly. "Continued attacks increase its adaptation rate." Someone demanded to know the alternative. The human paused. "There are only containment or erasure scenarios left." A chill passed through every listening world. Erasure did not mean killing the enemy. It meant rewriting the conditions that allowed it to exist. Before further explanation could be demanded, the enemy made its first direct move against a human asset. One of the frameworks, massive, silent, ancient, was struck by a distortion wave meant to tear apart stars. Space screamed. Energy levels spiked beyond comprehension. The framework did not dodge. It anchored itself. Human shielding systems activated layers no one else could see. Reality buckled. Time slowed near the structure, stretching the impact into something survivable, barely. The framework was held. For the first time, the enemy reacted differently. It paused. Sensors registered a shift. A recalculation. It had found resistance worth studying. Inside the command node, human caretakers watched in grim silence. "It noticed us," someone said. "Yes," came the reply. "That was inevitable." The enemy altered course. Not toward the Council. Not toward the densest worlds. Toward human space. The realization hit the galaxy like a physical blow. All those centuries of ignoring humanity. All the forgotten borders. All the assumptions that humans had vanished. The enemy had followed the strongest signal. Human territory, long labeled empty, lit up with activity. Automated systems activated defenses at scales the galaxy had never imagined. Entire regions folded inward, hiding behind layers of controlled distortion. Humans had not been hiding. They had been shielding the galaxy from what noticed them. As the enemy approached, human structures began to move, not as a fleet, but as a coordinated network. They did not surround the enemy. They guided it, like a current shaping the path of something too large to stop directly. Galactic observers struggled to understand the strategy. They realized it too late. Humans were not trying to stop the enemy from entering their space. They were luring it away from everyone else. One council member finally asked the question no one wanted answered. "If it reaches human core systems, what happens?" The reply came quietly. "Then we begin the solutions we hoped never to use." The enemy crossed the boundary. Human space changed instantly. Stars dimmed as energy was rerouted. Entire systems went dark on purpose. Human worlds, real, living worlds, were evacuated in silence, without announcement or protest. There were no public broadcasts, no calls for help, just execution. The enemy struck a human star. For the first time since it appeared, it failed. The star did not vanish. Instead, the enemy recoiled, data streams spiking wildly. Human engineers watched as the entity struggled against altered physical constants. "That star was modified," someone said. "Yes," another replied. "It was bait." Humanity had turned one of its own suns into a trap. The enemy learned again, but this time, the lesson cost it something. Energy was lost. Structure destabilized. It was not much, but it was the first wound. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the impossible happened. The enemy could be hurt. Not by anger, not by brute force, but by understanding. Human transmissions resumed, cold, controlled, and terrifyingly calm. The observation phase is complete, the voice said. Enemy classification updated. A pause. Escalation authorized. Across human space, systems older than most civilizations unlocked final safeguards. Weapons that did not fire beams or missiles began aligning. Devices that targeted assumptions, not matter. The part ends as the enemy adjusts again, sensing danger for the first time. And for the first time since it emerged, the galaxy sees something new in the data. The enemy is no longer advancing confidently. It is reacting, and humanity is done watching. The galaxy expected weapons. When humanity authorized escalation, every civilization braced for firestorms, planet killers, and impossible fleets pouring out of human space. Sensors were tuned to detect energy spikes that would shatter known limits. What they saw instead confused everyone. Human systems went quiet. Stars dimmed across entire regions, not from attack, but from deliberate shutdown. Power grids collapsed in perfect order. Trade lanes vanished. Even long-range beacons fell silent. It looked like a retreat. Some in the council dared to hope the humans were abandoning the fight. They were wrong. Human escalation did not begin with destruction. It began with rearrangement. Space near the enemy twisted in subtle ways. Distances stretched or compressed by tiny amounts, barely noticeable at first. Time readings drifted differently, depending on where they were measured. Cause and effect no longer lined up cleanly. Alien physicists screamed at their consoles. "This isn't an attack," one said in disbelief. "They're changing the rules." Human structures, previously static, began to align across light years with impossible precision. Not surrounding the enemy, not confronting it. They were building a boundary. Inside human command nodes, caretakers worked without urgency. Every motion was rehearsed. Every decision checked against simulations ran centuries earlier. One caretaker spoke softly. "Phase 1 complete." Another replied, "Proceeding to cost accounting." That phrase unsettled every non-human observer who heard it. The enemy struck again. It attempted to consume a star within the forming boundary. Its distortion field expanded, confident in a pattern that had never failed. The star resisted, not with force, but with refusal. Energy flow behaved incorrectly. The enemy tried to process it and encountered contradictions. Outputs exceeded inputs. Feedback loops formed where none should exist. The enemy pulled back. That alone shocked the galaxy. But what followed was worse. Human systems marked the star as lost. Without hesitation, the star collapsed, artificially, into a controlled singularity. The process erased it from the enemy's reach entirely. An inhabited system died with it. Billions of humans vanished in a fraction of a second. No screams were broadcast. No pleas were sent. Only a silent update flowed through human channels. Asset denied. Casualties within acceptable margin. The council erupted. Accusations of madness filled the chamber. How could any species accept such loss? How could humanity destroy its own worlds so easily? An ancient machine mind answered, its voice heavy. "They are not accepting the loss," it said. "They already accepted it, long ago." Humanity had prepared for this outcome before the enemy ever appeared. Every world within their territory existed with a shadow plan. Evacuation routes, data preservation, cultural backups, and, when necessary, termination protocols. Human worlds were not just places to live. They were positions. The enemy adapted again, shifting its approach. Instead of targeting stars, it struck the forming boundary itself, attempting to unravel the altered physics. Human escalation responded instantly. Devices activated that did not emit energy or matter. They projected constraints, limitations imposed directly on local reality. The enemy found its processing slowed, not by resistance, but by enforced inefficiency. It could still act, but every action now costs more. The galaxy watched as something unprecedented happened. The enemy began to hesitate. Inside the human command node, projections are updated. A caretaker frowned. "It's calculating alternatives." "Yes," another said, "which means it has recognized risk." Risk recognition implied something terrifying. The enemy now understood loss. Human escalation entered phase 2. The boundary closed, not as a wall, but as a funnel. Subtle gradients in space-time guided the enemy's movement, limiting its options without forcing it directly. Humans were hurting it. The council demanded explanations. A human transmission answered, stripped of detail but clear in intent. We are isolating the threat to a region where collateral damage is minimized. Someone demanded to know what minimized meant. The reply was delayed. Minimized relative to extinction. As the enemy was guided deeper into controlled space, the galaxy noticed something chilling. The region was not empty. It was full of ruins. Ancient systems. Dead civilizations. Long-lost battlefields. Places already written off as tragic history. Humanity had been collecting the galaxy's dead zones for centuries. Not out of respect. Out of utility. The enemy struck again, tearing apart a dead star cluster. The energy release would have wiped out nearby inhabited systems, if there had been any. Human escalation accounted for the blast, absorbing its effects into prepared sinks. Another human framework failed under strain, disintegrating into controlled debris. Again, no distress call. Again, a quiet update. Containment holding. Asset expended. The council began to understand. Human escalation was not a surge. It was a burn. Slow. Deliberate. Consuming resources no one else even knew existed. The enemy tried a new tactic. It reached outward, not physically, but informationally, probing human systems for patterns it could exploit. For the first time, it attempted to learn directly from humanity. It failed. Human systems were not centralized. There was no core intelligence to copy, no singular doctrine to reverse engineer. Humanity had fragmented itself on purpose. Every node knew only what it needed. No caretaker held the full picture. No system could betray the whole. The enemy encountered confusion where it expected structure. That confusion costed efficiency. The first true damage appeared. Sensors detected instability in the enemy's core processes. Nothing catastrophic, but cumulative. Human caretakers did not celebrate. Damage insufficient, one said. Yes, another replied. But the trend is acceptable. Outside human space, the galaxy reeled. For the first time, extinction was no longer inevitable. But survival came with a price no one else had paid yet. A council member asked the question that haunted every species. How much of themselves will humans lose to stop this? The ancient machine mind answered again. All of it, it said softly. If that is what the equation demands. As if summoned by those words, alerts surged through human channels. The enemy had begun forcing its way out of the funnel, seeking populated space again. Human escalation entered Phase 3. This phase had been labeled in the archives with a warning no one else had ever seen. Irreversible. Human systems across multiple regions are powered down permanently. Entire technological branches were severed. Capabilities refined over millennia were deliberately erased after use, denying the enemy any chance to study them. Humanity was burning its own future to save the present. The enemy surged, then slowed. Every attempt to break free met increasing contradiction. Physical laws shifted beneath it. Time refused to cooperate. Energy flows collapsed into waste. The enemy was still dangerous, but now it was trapped in decline. The part ends with a final update sent quietly through human command nodes. Containment stable. Long-term solution required. Another caretaker responds, voice heavy but steady. Prepare Phase 4. Somewhere far beyond the battlefield, deep within human archives, a final protocol awakens. One that has never been tested, never shared, and never intended to be used while anyone was still watching. The galaxy does not know it yet, but humanity has reached the point where survival is no longer the goal. Ending the threat, permanently, is. The galaxy did not learn the truth from humans. Humans never explained themselves unless it was necessary, and even then, only partially. What the galaxy learned next came from those who had been silent the longest. In a forgotten sector of the council chamber, a figure finally requested the floor. One of the first witnesses, a species so old that its people no longer measured time in generations, but in extinctions. Few listen at first. Everyone should have. We have seen this shape before, the witness said, its voice layered with centuries of memory. Not the enemy. The response. The chamber grew quiet. Across the galaxy, human escalation continued. Frameworks failed one by one. Each collapse planned, each loss accounted for. Human space shrank deliberately, like a controlled burn retreating inward. To outsiders, it looked like defeat. The witness activated a projection. The image was ancient, grainy, almost a myth. A galaxy, not this one, but similar, burning. Long ago, before many current species had evolved intelligence, something else had tried to end everything. Different forms, different methods. Same outcome projected, total extinction. The projection shifted. Human signals appeared, primitive compared to modern ones, but unmistakable. Small, quiet, late. They arrived after we had already begun to die, the witness said. We thought they were scavengers. The next image showed human constructions forming, not grand empires, not fleets, but patterns. Nets, locks, traps written into space-time itself. They did not ask for command. They did not claim authority. The witness continued. They asked one question, how long do you need to live? The galaxy held its breath. The projection advanced. The ancient enemy vanished. Not destroyed, not defeated, ended. But so did something else. The human presence faded with it. Systems went dark. Signals stopped. Entire branches of human civilization erased themselves from history. They paid the cost before we understood there was a cost, the witness said. And when it was over, they left. Murmurs filled the council. Someone demanded the truth. Are you saying humanity has done this before? The witness did not hesitate. Yes. Anger erupted. Fear followed. Why was this never shared? Why were humans never questioned? Because, the witness replied calmly. They asked us not to remember. At the time, the request had seemed strange. But after the war, when the survivors counted their worlds and their lives, forgetting humans was easy. Now, watching human space collapse deliberately, the pattern was unmistakable. Humanity was not improvising. They were repeating a role. Back in human command nodes, caretakers reviewed projections with faces carved from restraint. Casualty estimates climbed beyond what the galaxy could comprehend. One node lost contact entirely. Its star deliberately collapsed to deny the enemy data. Another caretaker closed their eyes. Archive that culture package, they said quietly. Yes, another replied. Transmit to deep storage. Human culture was being backed up like data, because soon, there might be no one left to remember it firsthand. The enemy reacted violently. Sensing its decline, it shifted into a desperate mode. Energy extraction became reckless. Local space-time fractured under the strain of forced adaptation. Several non-human systems were caught in the backlash. Human escalation intercepted what it could. They always did. Entire human fleets, never seen by the galaxy, emerged briefly, not to attack, but to absorb damage meant for others. Their hulls were not armored. They were disposable. Each ship carried compressed human histories, genomes, and memories. When they were torn apart, the data was ejected into secure folds of space. Human lives were ending. Humanity was preserving itself as information. The Council watched in horror as projection after projection confirmed the same truth. Humans were not planning to survive as they were. They were planning to survive as a concept. The witness spoke again. They do not measure survival by bodies, it said. They measure it by continuity. As the enemy weakened, something else began to surface in human data streams. Restrictions lifting, permissions unlocking. Caretakers stiffened. One spoke the words no one wanted to hear. Phase 5 conditions are approaching. That phase had never been shared. Even among humans, it was a myth. A last protocol, sealed not by authority, but by shame. It required something humanity had avoided since its earliest days. Unity. Humanity has fractured itself deliberately over millennia. Competing systems, independent nodes, redundant cultures, no single point of failure. Phase 5 reversed that. Across collapsing human space, command nodes began synchronizing. Walls between minds lowered. Distributed human intelligence, biological, digital, and something in between, started to converge. The enemy noticed immediately. Its processes spiked in alarm. For the first time, it stopped advancing entirely. The galaxy saw something unprecedented. The enemy was afraid. Not emotionally, not consciously, but its calculations no longer converged on success. The witness lowered its voice. This is where it always changes. A council member demanded to know what Phase 5 meant. The answer came from a human transmission, direct, unfiltered, and painfully honest. It means we stop being careful. The convergence accelerated. Human thought patterns aligned across light years. Not identical, but compatible. Shared assumptions, shared goals, shared sacrifice. Humanity was becoming something else. Not a hive, not a god, a singular decision engine. The enemy struck with everything it had. Reality tore open. Energy cascades wiped out entire dead regions. One human framework after another failed catastrophically. Human response did not change. They were absorbed. They rerouted. They endured. At last, the enemy forced a breakthrough, punching toward a populated galactic cluster. Humans moved to intercept. Not with shields. With themselves. A human-controlled star, artificially stabilized for this moment, was pushed directly into the enemy's path. The collision annihilated both. A wound opened in the enemy's structure, deeper than any before. But the price was absolute. That star had been one of humanity's oldest habitats. A council member collapsed in horror. "How can they keep doing this?" they whispered. The witness answered softly. "Because if they don't, no one else can." As the enemy reeled, human convergence reached completion. A new signal emerged, vast, quiet, and unmistakably human. Not a voice, a presence. The enemy recoiled instinctively, its processes spiraling. For the first time since its emergence, it made a choice not driven by optimization. It tried to flee. Humanity did not pursue it. They closed the trap. The region around the enemy was sealed completely. Space folded inward. Time gradients flattened. Energy flows stagnated. The galaxy's instruments failed to describe what was happening. Inside the sealed region, only two things existed: the enemy and humanity. The final update from human systems was broadcast everywhere, not as a message, but as a fact. Engagement has moved beyond the recovery threshold. Then, quieter. Human survival probability is now secondary. Caretakers across the remaining nodes acknowledged the status. Some smiled sadly. Some said nothing. The part ends as the sealed region collapses into a perfect void. No signals escaping, no data returning. The galaxy is left staring at an absence so complete it defies understanding. And one final realization settles over every civilization at once. Humanity has not lost the war. They have removed themselves from it. Whatever happens next, it will happen where no one can watch. The sealed region did not behave like space. From the outside, it looked like a wound that had healed too perfectly. No light escaped. No gravity leaked. Probes sent too close vanished without distortion, without signal, without even an error. It was as if the universe itself refused to acknowledge what was inside. The galaxy waited. For the first time since the crisis began, there were no new alerts. No stars vanished. No fleets died screaming. The enemy was gone from every sensor grid. So was humanity. Across thousands of worlds, celebrations tried to begin and failed. Relief felt wrong. Too quiet. Too empty. The galaxy had survived, but it felt like survival had been handed to it, wrapped in silence and absence. Inside the sealed region, humanity was still fighting. The space within was collapsing inward under carefully controlled failure. Physics had been bent past safety margins. Time no longer flowed evenly. Cause sometimes followed effect. Human systems struggled not against the enemy, but against the consequences of what they had done to trap it. At the center of the region, the enemy thrashed. For the first time since its creation, it could not expand. It could not optimize outwardly. Every attempt to process energy is fed back into constraint. Every calculation looped into contradiction. It was not dying. It was stuck. Humanity understood the problem immediately. Containment was working, but containment was temporary. Eventually, entropy would win. The sealed region would destabilize. The enemy would escape again, carrying with it everything it had learned. Humanity needed an ending. Not a battle. Not a victory. A conclusion. Inside the last functioning human command chamber, only one node remained fully intact. Its walls were bare. No symbols. No flags. Only interfaces and quiet light. A single human stood at the center. They were not special by rank or fame. They had not been chosen for strength or brilliance alone. They were chosen because they could understand what was required and still say yes. The chamber spoke softly. Consensus confirms solution viability, it said. Probability of total enemy erasure, acceptable. Probability of operator survival, 0. The human nodded. They had known before they arrived. Across fractured human networks, the message went out, not as an order, but as information. Every remaining human consciousness, biological and otherwise, received it at the same time. This was the final line. The solution required a reference point, a stable, conscious frame inside the sealed region, capable of anchoring reality while it was rewritten. Not a machine, not an algorithm, a living mind. The enemy could adapt to force. It could adapt to rules, but it could not adapt to meaning. The humans stepped forward and placed their hands on the interface. The chamber responded, opening pathways that had never been used. Outside the region, the galaxy felt it before it saw it. A pressure, like history holding its breath. Ancient warning systems activated across multiple civilizations, systems older than shared language. They did not issue alarms. They issued farewells. Inside the sealed region, the enemy surged one final time, sensing the shift. It hurled everything it had at the collapsing boundaries, ripping at reality with brute optimization. Human structures failed in cascades. Time shattered. The human did not move. Their mind expanded, not in power, but in context. They were no longer a point in space. They became a coordinate, a definition the universe could not discard without contradiction. The process began. Human systems initiated total erasure protocols. Not destruction, not negation, redefinition. The sealed region's physical constants were rewritten so that the enemy's mode of existence was no longer resolved. Its processes loop endlessly without output. Its internal structure failed to converge. The enemy tried to adapt. It could not, because there was nothing left to adapt to. The human felt everything. Not pain, not fear. Wait, every human loss, every sacrificed world, every erased future pressed inward, not as regret, but as confirmation. This was what all those preparations had been for. This moment, this choice. They spoke once, not aloud, but into the system itself. Do it. The chamber complied. Reality folded inward, collapsing the sealed region into a state so stable it resembled nothingness. Not a void, not absence. A conclusion written so deeply into the structure of space that it could not be undone without unraveling the universe around it. The enemy ceased, not explosively, not dramatically. It simply failed to be. The human anchor went with it. Outside, the galaxy watched as the sealed region dimmed, then vanished completely. No shockwave followed. No energy release. Just a quiet correction, like a mistake erased from a page. Sensors refreshed. There was nothing there. For several minutes, no one spoke. Then reports began to arrive. Stars stabilized. Distorted regions smoothed out. Physics returned to expected behavior. Long-range instruments confirmed the impossible. The enemy was gone. Not dormant. Not contained. Gone. Cheers erupted on some worlds. Others fell into silence. Entire species knelt, not in worship, but in something closer to shame. Human space remained dark. Councils sent messages. No response. Probes were launched toward former human regions. They found empty systems, powered-down frameworks, and worlds carefully evacuated centuries earlier. Humanity had not been wiped out in panic. They had finished a plan. As days passed, new data emerged. Human constructs left behind began activating. Not weapons, not defenses, but archives. Instructions, warnings, and a single recurring phrase, translated identically everywhere. We solved the problem. Now we saved you. Now we won. Just the problem. The galaxy began to understand the scale of what had been lost. Human art, human history, human voices. Gone. Not stolen, not destroyed, but spent. On one distant world, a child watched the stars and asked why there were gaps where bright regions used to be. An elder answered honestly, because someone stood there for us. Back in the deepest monitoring systems, something else was noticed. A residual pattern, too small to matter, too stable to decay. A faint human signature embedded into the fabric of space itself. Not a mind, not a person, a failsafe. If something like the enemy ever returned, if reality ever bent toward extinction again, the galaxy would not need to ask for help. Somewhere, impossibly, a familiar condition would trigger, and a quiet system would wake up, checking the universe with tired patience. The part ends with the final human log entry, unlocked automatically across all archives. If you are reading this, it means you survived. That was the point. Take care of what's left. We already handled the rest. The galaxy remains. Humanity does not. And yet, somehow, their presence has never felt stronger. The galaxy did not collapse after humanity vanished. That was the first surprise. Trade routes reopened slowly. Refugees returned to shattered worlds. Councils were formed with new rules, new caution, and far fewer voices. Life continued. Not easily, not quickly, but undeniably. Existence went on. And yet, everywhere, there was absence. Human space remained silent. Not destroyed. Not scared. Simply empty. Systems were intact, frameworks dormant, stars stable. It looked as if the owners had stepped out and never come back. At first, the galaxy waited. Days passed, then months, then years. No human signal ever returned. The sealed region where the enemy had vanished was gone completely, leaving no anomaly, no scar. Even the most sensitive instruments found nothing to study. It was as if the universe had agreed to forget. But the galaxy could not. Historians struggled with how to describe what had happened. No word fit. Victory felt dishonest. Survival felt undeserved. Many civilizations attempted to build monuments to humanity. None agreed on how. How do you honor a species that never asked to be remembered? Some worlds built statues anyway, idealized figures staring into the stars. Others declared days of silence, during which no ships launched and no transmissions were sent. A few species erased all records of human sacrifice entirely, unable to bear the weight of it. But the traces humanity left behind refused to disappear. Human constructs began activating on their own schedules. Not weapons, not defenses, instructions. In one world, a damaged planetary core stabilized itself when a dormant human system quietly corrected tectonic drift. On another, a failing star was guided back into equilibrium by invisible forces long buried in the system's architecture. Humanity was still fixing things, not as rulers, not as guardians, as maintenance. The Council realized, with growing unease, that humanity had never intended to stay even if they survived. Their systems were designed to outlast them, to function without command, to protect a galaxy that might never understand why. Warnings began appearing in deep space channels, ancient beacons with simple messages. Do not expand this region. Do not remove this structure. Do not experiment here. No explanation followed. Civilizations listened. They remembered what happened when humanity decided something was necessary. Children grew up hearing stories of the war, but the stories changed with time. The enemy became a shadow, then a myth, then a lesson about arrogance and unity. Humans became something stranger. Not gods, not heroes. A threshold. The point where the galaxy learned there were problems it could not solve alone. Explorers eventually entered former human systems. They found no bodies, no ruins of panic. Only carefully sealed vaults and empty habitats are preserved in perfect condition. Human worlds had been evacuated centuries before the final battle. Humanity had left space for the galaxy to inherit. But inheriting it felt wrong. On one recovered station, an alien historian found a human archive unlocked by accident. Inside were records, not of war, but of ordinary life. Music, arguments, humor, fear, love. The historian closed the file after a few minutes, overwhelmed. Humans had not been cold. They had been attached. They simply chose others over themselves. As decades passed, a new rule emerged across the galaxy, spoken quietly but enforced absolutely. Never tamper with human-built systems. Even the most ambitious empires obeyed. Attempts to reverse engineer human technology failed catastrophically or produced nothing useful at all. Human designs were complete, self-contained, and uninterested in improvement. They were not meant to be copied. They were meant to be left alone. One civilization broke the rule. A rising power, confident and impatient, attempted to dismantle a dormant human framework to study its materials. The moment their tools breached the outer layer, the structure powered up just enough to send a single transmission. Not a threat. A statement. Interference detected. Risk unacceptable. The framework then folded itself into higher-dimensional space and vanished forever. The civilization received no punishment. But no one ever tried again. Centuries passed. The galaxy stabilized into something quieter. Smaller wars still happened. Old rivalries never fully died. But whenever conflict grew too large, whenever destruction threatened to spiral out of control, someone would ask the question humans had once asked the galaxy. How long do you need to live? That question changed things. Entire doctrines shifted. Weapons were redesigned not to annihilate, but to contain. Strategies evolved to minimize irreversible loss. Humanity's greatest legacy was not power. It was restraint. Then came the incident. It began as a minor anomaly, an energy fluctuation in a forgotten sector near the edge of known space. Instruments flagged it as unusual but not dangerous. Probes were sent. Data was logged. Committees formed. No one panicked. Until the anomaly repeated. The pattern was wrong. Too efficient. Too similar to something buried deep in shared memory. An ancient warning beacon activated on its own. For the first time in recorded history, it transmitted without being prompted. Monitor closely, it said. Threshold conditions may recur. The message spread across the galaxy in minutes. Fear returned. Not loud, not frantic, but sharp and focused. The council reconvened in an emergency session. This time, there was no arguing. No accusations. No delays. They had learned. Sensors were aligned. Data shared openly. Evacuation plans reviewed, not as last resorts, but as responsibilities. And then, nothing happened. The anomaly faded. The energy normalized. The threat never formed. The galaxy exhaled. Some called it coincidence. Others were not so sure. Deep within the fabric of space, something subtle had shifted. A correction too small to measure, too precise to be natural. A human failsafe had activated and deactivated, without announcing itself. The galaxy had passed a test it did not know it was taking. On a distant world, long after the war had become history, a child stood beneath a night sky, filled with unfamiliar constellations. Human stars had been repurposed, renamed, reimagined. The child asked a question every generation eventually asked. Are the humans really gone? The elder beside them looked up at the stars and considered the truth. They're not here, the elder said carefully. But they're not gone either. Where are they, then? The elder smiled sadly. Everywhere we didn't break. That night, the child dreamed of quiet machines watching the universe patiently, not waiting to rule it, but waiting to step in if it failed again. The part ends with a final, unsettling realization spreading slowly through the galaxy. Humanity did not disappear because they were finished. They disappeared because their job was done. And if the galaxy ever truly faced extinction again, it would not be humanity's turn to step forward. It would mean everyone else had failed. The galaxy did not notice the moment it almost ended again. There was no screaming alarm, no collapsing stars, no fleets burning across the void. That was the danger. The anomaly appeared as a rounding error, an inconsistency in vacuum energy measured by 3 unrelated observatories. Each flagged it, archived it, and moved on. Individually, it meant nothing. Together, it formed a pattern. A junior analyst in a minor research world noticed it weeks later. She did not understand why it bothered her, only that the numbers felt familiar, too clean, too efficient, like something trying not to be seen. She filed a low-priority report. That report touched a human-built filter. The filter activated instantly. Across distances no signal should have crossed. A condition check completed. Parameters compared against thresholds older than most civilizations. One condition returned true. Nothing exploded. Something woke up. Buried deep inside the fabric of space-time, below matter, below energy, below the assumptions of reality itself, a system initialized. It did not announce itself. It did not ask permission. It checked the galaxy. Population stable. Physics consistent. Causality intact. Threat probability negligible, but non-zero. That was enough. In a forgotten region of space, light bent in a way no one was looking at. A structure unfolded, not from nothing, but from between moments. It was small by human standards, barely the size of a moon. Inside, there were no humans, only their logic. A presence compiled itself, not a mind, not a person, but a decision pattern shaped by millions of past choices. Every sacrifice, every calculation, every quiet moment where humanity had chosen others over itself. The galaxy did not feel fear. It felt watched. The anomaly tried to grow. It tested local constants, nudging probabilities, seeking efficiency. It was not an enemy yet. It was the idea of one. The human system noticed immediately. It did not respond with force. It responded with corrections. Physical constants adjusted by infinitesimal amounts. Just enough to make expansion inefficient. just enough to make growth pointless. The anomaly stalled. It tried again elsewhere. Another correction followed. Across the galaxy, nothing dramatic happened. No one died. No ships were lost. No systems went dark. History almost changed, and then didn't. In the deepest layers of the human system, a routine is completed. The result was logged automatically, translated into every known language, and stored in archives no one checked anymore. Threat resolved at pre-emergent stage. No signature. No explanation. Just a timestamp. The system powered down. But not completely. It left a channel open. On the Council's oldest monitoring array, one that had not received meaningful data in centuries, a single line appeared. It was not marked urgent. It was not marked dangerous. It was markedly familiar. The message was simple. Status, acceptable. No one knew how to respond. For weeks, the galaxy argued about what it meant. Some claimed it was a glitch. Others insisted it was a relic finally decaying. A few, very few, understood the truth and said nothing. Because the truth was unsettling. Humanity has not left a guardian. They had left a standard. The universe itself had been taught what too far looked like. Years passed. Civilizations grew. Some failed. New species rose and learned the same old lessons. Curiosity pushed boundaries. Ambition tested limits. And every time something came close, too close, to becoming irreversible, reality itself seemed to resist just a little more than it should. Weapons malfunctioned at critical moments. Catastrophes lost momentum. Disasters became recoverable, not because the galaxy had become wiser, but because someone had adjusted the margin for error. On a quiet research station, long after the last human monument had faded into obscurity, an archivist uncovered a sealed file labeled only with a date older than the war. It contained a single human recording. The speaker was tired, calm, unremarkable. "We never believed we were special," the voice said. "We were just willing to be responsible." The recording paused, as if the speaker had considered stopping there. Then it continued. "If you're hearing this, it means the galaxy keeps going. That's good. That's enough." Another pause. "We didn't save you because you were better than us. We saved you because you were there." The file ended. No instructions followed. No warning. That, too, was very human. The archivist sat in silence for a long time afterward. Far away, on the edge of mapped space, a young explorer looked out from the bridge of her ship at a region that had no name. The stars there felt steady. Too steady. She asked her navigation system why the route avoided that area. The system hesitated, an unusual thing. "Historical probability correction zone." It finally answered. She frowned. "What does that mean?" The system searched its records. It found nothing definitive. Only an old human phrase, stored without context. Because someone already paid the cost. The explorer did not understand. But she changed course anyway. The galaxy endured, not because it was strong, but because it had learned, secondhand, what responsibility looked like. Humanity never returned. No fleets emerged. No voices spoke again. No words reactivated. And yet, when things went wrong, when equations bent toward disaster, when ambition threatened to outpace wisdom, something always seemed to intervene at the smallest possible moment. Not enough to rule, just enough to say, no. In the deepest layer of reality, a dormant system waited, not counting time, not watching actively, but ready. It did not hope. It did not fear. It simply existed to answer one question: should it ever be asked again? And if the universe ever pushed itself to the edge, if everything failed, if extinction became inevitable once more, there would be no debate, no council vote, no plea for help. A quiet system would wake up, run its checks, and, with the same tired certainty humanity had always shown, it would respond. "Fine, I'll handle it."